From advertising, branding, to design and experiences, how are we going to use AI to create the future that we want? Join us for breakfast. So, Natalie, thank you for jumping on the Zoom call and to take us through what you're doing. So just remind us briefly who you are and what it is that you do at Lafayette Labs.
I am a designer, a human being who interacts with tech every day. I'm an artist, and I am the UX lead at LFL. I think it's called a design lead, UX. But what that means is that I work across a lot of different disciplines at LFL. I've worked with, I think, most of our major clients at this point, coming in and trying to first and foremost advocate for the user, understand their needs, understand what they might be looking for, and then obviously understanding business needs, how we can get those two things to work together, and just trying to make these interactions that we have so much of our day in front of screens a little bit easier, a little bit warmer, a little bit more playful. That the playfulness doesn't always end up in the end result, but it's definitely something that I prefer when I'm interacting with technology.
And I think it's, as the technology is rapidly accelerating, how people interface with technologies that have increasingly different mediums. You can speak to them, you can prompt them, they're integrated within the interfaces. It is changing also the discipline of UX. And you did a very interesting program over the past few weeks, just to summarize the tools you've been experimenting with. And we're very lucky to have you present some of your key findings. So can you tell us briefly what the UX process is, maybe share that slide, and
Sure.
what it is and what are the parts of the process that you evaluated AI tools against?
Sure. So I went through, and it actually was kind of a perfect storm. So Figma Make was recently released to all Figma users. Figma Make, for people who are not familiar, is the AI Figma tool that allows you to take your designs and create interactive prototypes extremely quickly. As a UX designer, a lot of my time has been spent in creating these robust prototypes that we can test either with existing clients, with existing users, or with net new users to get a sense of what really resonates with people and what doesn't, what feels helpful and what just feels annoying. And so for me, Figma Make was something that I was really eager to explore. And at the same time, I wanted to compare and contrast it with some other tools that are already out on the market. And I also wanted to figure out how I might integrate AI into my own workflows in a way that felt helpful and meaningful and didn't water down the work in ways that I think a lot of creatives feel uncomfortable with. Okay, so broadly speaking, the UX process is roughly, it follows this timeline. It can be very, very cyclical. If you are a different kind of designer or from a different school of thought, this might look different, but broadly speaking, it's going to include these 6 steps. So we start with problems and how might we's. We go right into research and synthesis to make sure that we are validating our assumptions, that we've actually hit on the right problem, and then into design ideation once you've got some of those really great insights. Now, for steps 1 and 2, AI wasn't as helpful, but for steps 3 through 6, which include design ideation, iteration cycles, evaluation of design and feedback, and then documentation and application of feedback, AI actually was really helpful to me.
I think it's very interesting that the first 2 steps, it can provide some information, but I think a lot of what we're doing still has primary research, actually talking to users, observing behaviors. And so synthetic research, I found actually can be useful, but you're right, it's not the whole picture. So it's not as clear a disruption yet, at least.
Definitely. And I think also, like, when you're looking for things like themes in your synthesis, AI can be fairly helpful, but you do lose some of that, like, a lot of design, I think, relies on a little bit of learned intuition. Understanding that like AI is not a human person. I am a human person. And so things that resonate with me, I might need to pull out a little bit more than just kind of like these high level themes that AI might be able to give you. So in terms of the design process, let's talk about the first place where I started using AI. And I want to be clear that I tested a lot of different tools, but I just want to talk a little bit about the way in which I use these tools rather than the tools themselves. So to set the scene, something that I come up against as a designer is often I have a cool idea and I want to explore it, but I don't have a lot of time or budget to work on it, especially when we're moving really, really quickly. And so part of what I wanted to know was just, can AI get me like 80% of the way there if I'm just working through some very common flows, so that I don't have to start from scratch. So the first thing that I needed to do was kind of reframe my understanding of where I would start the design process.
By the way, I heard it the same way you wrote it.
I do. Let's talk about you and me. So this is pretty straightforward information, right? You want to start working with AI, you're going to have to generate a prompt that is reliable and clear, and for me, having a structure around that is really helpful. So when I started going in and experimenting with ChatGPT and other tools, I came up with this prompt structure. It exists in other places. Feel free to grab it, rip it, use it as you like. But this information, product type, target users, product goals, user scenarios, main features, and desired outcomes, is going to basically be the armature or the wireframe that you use to feed into the AI so that it gives you something that you can work with when it comes to some of these design tools.
That makes sense. It sounds like the more specific, right, the more effective it's going to be.
At the beginning. So when we talk about iteration a little bit later, we'll talk about the need to be fairly robust and specific when you first start. And then as you're iterating, you'll want your feedback to be a little bit more concise, because you need to give the AI kind of like bite-sized ways that it can make changes over time. So I fed all of this information into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT came back with this really beautiful and robust design brief, something that I as a designer would love to get at the beginning of every project. Yeah, and I think, as you know, that never happens. But what you may not know is that ChatGPT can actually take that really beautiful and robust design brief and format it as a JSON style structured prompt. So what I did was I copied this JSON structured prompt that ChatGPT gave me based on all the information we worked through. I copied it, I went into Figma Make, and then I was able to just paste all that code right into Figma Make, and then it was able to give me, sometime later, 5 minutes later, a really great, usable, interactive prototype. So what you can see here is I asked ChatGPT to work with me to build a prototype to help people with dogs find other people with dogs who they might want to date and make sure that their dogs get along before they even start a relationship.
So how much of what we're seeing here was straight out of the JSON prompt, and how much of it needed some refinement by hand? This is literally straight out of the prompt?
Yeah, so this is the first pass that Figma Make took. And we'll talk a little bit about like the issues with what I'm seeing here, but like if you were just looking at these videos and not necessarily trying to use this as a product, you would be like, oh my God, designers are over. Designer, don't know her. Like, but as we get into the usability issues with a lot of these, we'll talk about like how much AI can do for you and what you're going to have to push past the AI capability to get to, especially when we talk about like these fun, intuitive experiences. Like I noticed that, just as an example, you might see here, AI is not great, at least the Figma AI wasn't great at finger movements, like figuring out the way that fingers move on a screen. And so every single time that I wanted to maybe take some action on the screen, there had to be like a button, which is great for accessibility, but not necessarily great for ease of use. So what worked well, we got a working prototype, right? As I was saying, if you are a designer of any ilk, you know that getting a prototype to work exactly as you want it to work every single time is really difficult to do. And the fact that they've now included interactive text fields for me was like a game changer. When we were prototyping a product I was working on last year, to get to just allowing users to type in information, we actually needed to go and start coding, which is the opposite of what you want to be doing when you're prototyping, right? What you want to be doing is getting something that is low risk, highly usable, that you don't have to burn dev hours on, to get a sense of whether or not people will be able to use it. And so much of the time when we were running tests on that particular product, I was like, man, I wish people could type. And now they can. The issues are that when it comes to things like accessibility, interaction feedback, polish, fidelity of features, there is a lot of follow-up work that you need to do. So, for example, it didn't matter that I told the AI as part of the prompt that we needed to meet AA accessibility standards. There were still a fair number of places where even to my eye, I could tell I was like, that text's not dark enough, this is not accessible. The interaction feedback that we talked about a little bit earlier, where like as human beings, every step of the way, we want to feel like we did it right. And the AI wasn't great at providing that kind of like nurturing. I mean, I not that it would be, right? Like it's not a nurturing entity, I guess. Missed features is something that you're going to get with everyone. I miss features sometimes when I'm working through my designs, but it is something that you will have to go back and like basically check the AI's work to make sure that the way in which you envisioned it or the way in which it is intended to work actually works that way. And then I would just say overall a lack of polish. So
lack of polish in comparison to had you done this yourself by hand? Because to me it looked polished. It was in the sense that, you know, to the untrained eye, it looked fairly accomplished.
It did, but it also looked incredibly generic. So we'll talk about a little bit the ways that you can kind of work around that lack of polish. But when I say lack of polish, what I'm talking about is like, is this an interface that I feel like is truly something that's unique, something that I haven't seen before, something that it feels warm and it feels like someone put work into this to make my life easier. And that's not necessarily what I was finding.
So it took you from 0 to 1 quickly. It looked accomplished, but it still required you to look deeply because it missed a few key things that would have made it probably a fail in the eyes of your client at that point.
Yes, definitely.
So what's the next phase?
So in terms of, back to our design process map, in terms of design ideation, I give it 3 stars, honestly. No, out of 3. I only have space for 3 stars here. So in terms of design ideation, I think it's a great tool. I am going to obviously be integrating Figma Make into my everyday workflow. I'm already trying to figure out ways that I can use it differently, like not just on interface design, but like, can I use it to create tools internally that we're going to be able to scale for ourselves to use? Like, how many times have we sat there and been like, uh-oh, we need to completely redesign this deck because it doesn't match updated brand standards, or it doesn't match our clients' brand standards. And so I think I'm gonna work through a prototype next of, can I feed Figma Make slides and then have it design an entire presentation for me. Okay, so next let's talk about iteration cycles. So here's my little green man. Don't ask me why he's there. He just delights me. Yeah, he's really working through it. And talking about how I used AI in my iteration cycle process. So the kind of need here is, I'm a designer with an existing prototype who needs to quickly change the look and feel to match updated brand guidelines. This is something we were kind of touching on a second ago. How can AI tools help me get this work done without having to start over from scratch? This is, I think, a very painful exercise for a lot of designers. Very often when a client, or when you yourself are going through a rebrand, you don't have a full library, right? That you can start pulling from and saying, okay, this works and this doesn't work within the context of our product experience. And you're also spending time kind of going down rabbit holes that don't tend to pan out. And so you're taking a lot of time out of what should be a very creative endeavor and just like pushing pixels to try to make it look different.
Right, and that's a big tension point for a lot of, UX processes. It's when you go from pure usability to stepping into a place where the feel of something, the visual aesthetic, this nebulous idea of what feels premium versus what feels affordable, they're all like soft areas of design, and they're less, I would say, science-based than strictly following usability and accessibility. So there's usually a healthy tension at this phase, right?
Totally. So like when I'm talking about accessibility, like at least I've got criteria to like check off. When we're talking about things like brand, like the number of times that I've gotten feedback that was just, that started with the words, I feel like, and as a designer, you're put in a position where it's like, I can't respond tactically to I feel like.
You know what? The word like is a word I refuse to hear or to use during meetings. It means nothing. It's fine if you're designing someone's wedding and I want to make sure the bride likes her floral arrangement. But when you're designing a product or an experience, like is just not a useful term. So
totally. Or like, can we make it pop? Oh. Pop is not something that I can really measure against.
What I can do
or make
is
it more funky. Can you make it more funky? What does that even mean?
Oh.
Fuck. Well, let's put George Clinton and the Parliament Funkadelic right on the loading screen. I find myself a little bit torn in these situations because I want people to explore, right? I want people to, I truly feel right now that like our digital tools are a little boring. Like I'm thinking back to like when I was a kid and what we thought the internet was going to be, and I'm like, we're not nearly weird enough. And the people who are being weird on the internet need to stop. I'm talking about like creatively weird, like putting weird art in your home instead of like hotel art.
The whole culture around breaking traditional UX principles. Like Snap was one of the first to break UX principles and have hidden nested menus that you could only find if someone showed you or you spent enough time with it. And it made you feel like you're culturally in the know. So there's a lot of UX that flies in the face of usability, but that's done as a sort of cultural and brand exercise. I mean, don't talk to me about Roblox and my kids who play in there and the abominable UX you see in there. But again, they feel like they're breaking rules that were set by a previous generation, and it's a form of dissent, So there's plenty of room in there.
Totally, but I also think like part of it is that the corporations that have the money to invest in these kind of like non-linear or non-traditional experiences are corporations that typically have to work at scale. So it's not in their best interest to create these niche little experiences that, maybe 10% of their users are going to touch. But if you have a tool like this where you can experiment a lot more quickly, it might give us the opportunity to get a little bit weirder, a little bit funner, a little bit, I hate to say it, but funkier.
With what we're doing. So, sorry. That was a side tangent.
All right, so how'd you go from this now to the brand?
Okay, so.
Now, let's say we've got our existing prototype that we walked through earlier. But my client comes to me and they're like, I just was working with an in-house designer. They have been working through this new look and feel library, and I know that it doesn't match what we're doing with our app, but I would love to see if we can take some inspiration from the work that they're doing and apply it to our existing prototype. If a client who hired me to make this came to me and asked me to reskin it to look like this, I know myself, if I had to do it manually, I would cry for 15 minutes. I would go outside and curse for a little while, and then I would come back to my desk and it would take me hours and hours and hours. So what you can do now in Figma Make, as we've been talking about, is that there are two ways to apply a new design language to an existing prototype. The first option is to just attach artboards from existing in-progress designs that may or may not be completed yet. So like this is a great example where a client is going through a rebrand and they don't know what the outcome of the rebrand is going to be, but they want to start testing some of these different look and feels or different creative directions against their existing product line. So you could work with a brand designer if you're the designer working on the brand. You could just literally take Figma artboards that you are in the middle of working on, attach it to a prototype, and then you'll see what happens after that in just a moment. Another thing that you can do is you can connect a single Figma library to inform the entire prototype's design. So the use case here, I think, is a little bit more broad. Like, let's say that let's say that you are working with a company that's replatforming. So throughout the replatform, you're redesigning components one by one, and now you've got this full library and you want to see what everything is going to look like together cohesively. You go ahead and you connect that library to your prototype and you're able to see what the completely replatformed product is going to look like. This is a little tricky because you can only connect one library to an individual prototype, and it can only be done once. So once you've connected a library to it, you can't now connect a second one. My workaround is I just duplicated the prototype. But let's take a look at what happens if you connect artboards. So something that I really enjoyed about this was that I was able to take a design that really felt nothing like the original Frankfurter app, apply it, and then see in real time the ways in which the kind of like overall feel changed, right? The original one was very bright, it was playful, it was like made you feel like it was designed by a beautiful Labrador. This one feels a lot more sleek, maybe a little bit understated, not nearly as playful. And so what we could do is basically give the client an idea of, hey, you're going to lose some of that playfulness, but maybe you'll gain a little bit more elegance. Is that something that you want to invest time into? And you can do it in a matter of minutes instead of a whole week trying to reskin a bunch of different screens. And honestly, like if I were the client, I would, took me a few minutes to get this reskinned. I would look at it and I would say, actually, you're right, this doesn't feel right for this particular project. Let's move on.
I mean, it looks like it's taken some of it, but not all of it. So it has the point sizes. It doesn't seem to have changed the icons much, and it also ignored the green khaki background.
Yep. So let's talk about what it did well. There's a completely different look and feel, right, to existing flows. The flows work exactly the same. It looks completely different. It allows you to do really fast directional experimentation, and then it's really good at identifying component styles and pulling those styles. The things that it is not as good at is there is definitely a loss of depth and nuance. So like when we talk about like those like beautiful backgrounds, those are backgrounds that have to be generated by manually. Sophisticated visual treatments. If there is a level of sophistication to the visual treatments that very often requires a lot of nesting within the assets, those are definitely going to get lost. And then conflicting UX elements. So sometimes the AI is unable to register that like these two elements are actually doing the same thing, and it'll include both, which then becomes redundant and a little bit confusing to users. So again, like I think that this is the difference between someone working on it who is fairly junior or who's still learning quite a lot, and someone working on it who has a level of experience around things like creative direction, sophistication when it comes to user experience flows, and just like not being a robot. Like I'm a human being and I have these like flesh sticks coming off of my hands, and so I know that I want them to work in a certain way when I'm touching a screen, versus when an AI takes a pass. It's very clear to me that like, oh, you're not thinking about this from a usability perspective. The AI is thinking about it from a success or failure perspective. I was told to do this, success or failure.
It's also basing it a lot on we don't know what trained data. So it might be based on precedent, it might be mostly derivative, it might be also maximizing how it operates Figma, and maybe that's a criteria for success that was baked into it. So it's hard to tell, but I think what's again interesting here, similar to the previous chapter, is it's done a big chunk of the work, it's done it fairly well, but it hasn't done it to a place that it's ready to immediately hand over to client or to turn into something that's immediately like the answer. But it's done,
Totally.
It's accelerated the process.
Because I do think something that you were mentioning, Yan, is very much like top of mind for designers, where it's like, am I going to just... Are product managers just going to start using prompts and replacing me and everything that I do? And I think AI is going to take a lot of the annoying stuff off of our plates, but I really don't think designers are going anywhere. This is really just the point at which I think I began to understand that not all AI tools are built the same. So when I was doing some of my experimentation, what I was trying to figure out was which tools work best, right? And which tools work best for which job. And I think that will really make a difference to designers when you're presenting the work. So when I used a tool like Google Stitch, what I got was a collection of static individual screens. When I used a tool like Figma First Pass, what I got was a scrollable but static first screen. What I got when I used Figma Make was an interactive prototype. And depending on how you present, the feedback that you get from your client is going to be fairly different. So getting an understanding of which tools are good for which jobs is going to be fairly important. But I did want to call out that the way in which your designs are going to be evaluated and the kind of feedback that you're going to get are also going to depend heavily on your client's values, right? If you are working with a client who is really passionate about something like accessibility, you're going to need to follow up and do a little bit more work to make sure that everything is accessible and everything works the way that it should when working with AI. So going back to a story I was telling earlier, I told AI, hey, we need to reach AA accessibility standards across every single screen, across every single feature, across every single interaction point. And as you can see here, when I opened up my wave extension, it missed a ton. And so I do think that there is a lot of work to be done around when things move really, really fast. I think that there is there's no greater lesson that we all should have learned over the past 25 years than that when things are moving really, really fast, systems become extremely biased. We see it in tech, we see it across the medical world, we see it in society, we see it all the time. People get really, really excited about something, and then we start running with that tech, and then a lot of blind spots are created. I am a person who has been in the past and continues to be really skeptical, not about AI's capabilities, but about like, are we doing the right thing? Are we using these tools mindfully? Is it ethical for us to use these tools? Don't come to me for those answers because I don't have them, but I suspect that this genie's not going back in the bottle. So as we continue to use these tools, one of my big takeaways is retain your sense of humanity. An AI cannot see, cannot touch, cannot hear, cannot feel. And so
do you feel here with the wave extension and accessibility in particular, did it miss the mark?
No. So the wave extension actually was a great tool. I'm talking about chat, all of the tools that I've used so far, Gemini, ChatGPT, Figma Make, they are not necessarily they were not designed for justice, equity, fairness. Something that I really like about the Wave tool, and I would advocate for people to use the Wave extension in Chrome and Browser Stack in Figma, is Wave is a nonprofit that specifically their mission is to make the internet a more accessible place for people with all kinds of disabilities. And so when I ran it over my designs, I found that Figma Make missed the mark in a lot of places. And so I really think it's up to us as designers to do that follow-up due diligence. Yan, the cheekiest man alive, asked me a question a few weeks ago. How do disciplines like UX change with AI? And from a practical standpoint, a lot. The kind of, I think, I call it pixel pushing. I don't know if people like that, but that's what I call it. That designers are asked to do around like detailed documentation, manual curation, designing systems from scratch, negotiation, these tiny tweaks that often I feel like really suck the joy out of some of what we do. Questions of what if, delayed timelines, rounds of review, and then theoretical feedback, right? So things like, I don't really understand this interaction point that would be difficult or time consuming to animate, now can be animated fairly quickly, and feedback that starts with I feel like, which we talked about earlier. But rationally, I actually don't think UX changes dramatically as a practice. Maybe the things that we do change, but the way that we think, our approach, the ways in which we need to be like boundlessly optimistic while retaining some level of skepticism has to stay the same. So doing things like deep thinking, exploring different levels of fidelity, keeping a bias towards action, and investing in design strategy, which I think are all things that I myself and I know other designers have really thirsted for, have really craved. These are the kind of things that I hope we will be able to invest more in, because we're allowing the AI to do things that were formerly time intensive, but that don't necessarily move the needle in terms of strategic alignment or creative direction or encouraging play, or delivering on a long-term vision.
Thank you, Natalie. That was like super thoughtful and really interesting to see how you think about it and the tools that you're actually leaning on. Like right now, how do you feel about your personal and professional goals moving forwards with AI? Is it freeing you up to do things that you've always wanted to do? Do you see it as an opportunity? Are you cautiously optimistic? How would you define how you feel about these rapidly moving tools in what it is that you do and your personal professional goals?
That's a loaded question. I personally feel a little bit conflicted. I am hoping that what happens is that we have these really, really robust and powerful tools that allow me to focus on the things that like I find really rewarding and really important in the design process that don't always get their due. I am a huge fan of research. I think you know this, Yan. I am a huge primary research advocate. Get out from in front of a screen, go talk to a person, figure out what their problems are. And I'm hoping that that is something that we free ourselves up to do more and more. I think designers in the last few years have been really pushed to the edge to become specialists. And what I am craving is actually AI giving us a little bit more room so that we don't have to force our creative energy into these really narrow modalities. I love to learn. I talk to my fellow designers all the time about the things that they do. We have incredible modelers here. We have incredible illustrators here. We have really, really incredible motion designers. And I find myself, I get like a little bit jealous where I'm like, I want to learn to do that. I want to figure this out. I want to know how I can take all the stuff that I know and use what they're doing to help make everything easier to understand. And so I'm hoping that what AI does for us is that, like, when people talk about like the T-shaped person, I feel like the top of the T has gotten lost a lot over the last few years, and it's just like, what's our super deep knowledge or well of knowledge? And I'm hoping we get like a little bit more of that top of the T where people feel a little bit more free to experiment creatively, because, you know, I want to take a big swing with this, but it's going to suck up 20 hours. And I don't have those 20 hours to pull from anywhere but like my time with my family.
I mean, it seems to me like also in UX, like in a lot of other creative disciplines where AI is stepping in a big way, it's going to create an even bigger wedge between the average and, dare I say, lazy UX practitioner, because it's going to appear to finish things quicker and easier, but it's also going to make you, I think, more generic and possibly also more likely to fall into the traps of well executed but not very deeply thought or not particularly responsive to a user need in a very deep way. So I think like a lot of what I'm seeing is a lot of these tools are going to make the average quicker and easier, but will create a deeper wedge for, I think, people like you who are thinking deeply about how to captivate a user and how to make it a genuinely captivating and differentiated experience, because you need to look out for those pitfalls and you need to carve out a path that fewer will follow. So it's an interesting dynamic, but I don't know if you're feeling the same way, but there's a lot of disciplines where I'm seeing more average being done quickly, and the exceptional is that much harder to chase. But for people like you who are using the tools and learning and identifying the pitfalls, it's in some ways an opportunity, because now it means that you can do the boring stuff quicker and really focus on the stuff that matters, the highly differentiated, highly valuable experiences. So I was actually quite energized the first time you presented this to me.
I am extremely energized, to be clear. I am extremely energized. But I feel the anxiety coming from other designers around AI. I feel, I'm a painter, I feel the anxiety coming from other artists around AI. And like, something that my annoying brand of optimism is like, can't let the bastards get me down. like people might use this tech for bad. People will use this tech for bad. I have to figure out how I'm gonna use it for good, to help people, to make things easier for people, to make things more accessible for people. Because ultimately, I think that's why we got into this industry. It was not like everybody wants a website, great, I will build you a website. But what I really want to do is like help people gain access to the things that make their lives easier.
Yeah, and I appreciate you for it. And thank you for sharing all this with us. I think it was a major eureka moment for me, so I'm so glad we took the time to do this.
Well, when you asked me that question, I was like, he thinks he has an answer already.
I have
My answer's gonna be
like any UX designer, I have a hypothesis that I need to prove or disprove.
Yes, true.
Thank you so much, Natalie.
Yeah, of course.